when at 19 years old, I haven't felt that until I saw that juror last night say, I felt sorry for Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman in the same breath. That hurt me to the core so bad that how can a middle-aged woman of 50 years old claim that she's God-fearing and say in the same breath she has the same remorse for a man whose life is going to be inconvenienced versus a child that is absolutely dead, and we cannot bring him back. And the parents have yet to start mourning the loss of their child.
I'm going to say this, Fred. I'm going to push back a little bit because I think that it's a situation where in that I don't question her. I don't question her relationship with God. I think you talked about it earlier. I would question, if I was to question, I would question her. And Rick, you talked about it earlier. Her ignorance or knowledge of interacting with black folks on a regular basis, and seeing them not as a statistic or something that's far from her, but interacting such that she sees them as people. And I'm not, and I don't know the lady's heart. I can't speak to that. I'm not an apologist for white America by no stretch of the imagination. But I'm gonna say this: a lot of it a lot of times what shows itself as a racist act is oftentimes it's fear. It's fear because you don't know, and the stuff that I don't know, the people I don't know, the communities I don't know, I'm kind of afraid of them because now I got to it's like the boogeyman. You know, once you know the boogeyman doesn't exist, you sleep well at night.
Sleep better
but when
at
you
night.
think, it's like you make up things in your mind that are far, and that's sometimes a relationship that non-black America has with black America. And it's just, but it's not across the board because you got some folks that are fighting on behalf of this, some good white folks that are fighting, some good Asian folks, whatever. But that's just my take on that.
And then when you add the images that we portray on TV and in movies, I mean, not only how you know that these guys will kill you for nothing, and they hire killers, and I mean, it's just crazy the stuff that they're putting on TV that sinks into people's minds. And even though people can say, "Oh, we didn't pay attention to that," absolutely, there's no way you can shut that out your mind. That you view a certain race as this type of.
I'm gonna hold you there, Rick. I'm gonna hold you there. We go on the break. When we come back, we're gonna ask, what can we as Black America do to reinforce positive images in America? We'll be right back. Thanks, Rick. Hold on one second.
Experts know that for pastry, Baker's Bodega has it all. Exclusive brands like Westco Bankmark, Satin Ice, and Pastry Pride. One-on-one day seminars for cake decorating and fountain art. So for our service, wide range of ingredients and supplies, and for the low prices, Baker's Bodega has it all. But you don't
have to be an expert.
Baker's Bodega, 7860 Paramount Boulevard in Pico Rivera. We're waiting.
I kill all of them. And they steal my dog manslaughter.
You know make it better. What, bro? A michelada. Michelada? What's a michelada? A michelada is somewhere in the middle of a Mexican Bloody Mary and a Mexican margarita.
Oh, I got you covered, bro.
You got a cup in your pocket?
No, sir. I got my pocket-sized michelada. Mucho macho michelada.
Pocket size?
Pocket size, so you can take it with you anywhere you go.
Where'd you get that at?
At the nearest convenience store, and you can also buy it at muchomachomichelada.com.
You know what will make it better? After we get drunk, if we had a line we could call.
We can call the drunk line. You can leave a message and then log on to your site and listen to your stupidity afterwards.
What's that number?
It's 855-MICHE-69.
What's that number again?
855-MICHE-69.
Awesome. Mucho macho michelada.
Ticketsurgeon.com. Reach us at 855-WIN-4-199.
Did you get caught speeding, texting while driving, or doing anything else you weren't supposed to do?
Give us a call. Don't miss work. Don't lose out on the money. Don't get any more points. What about your insurance? Let us fight for you. The Ticketsurgeon.com at 855-WIN-4-199.
Welcome to the Monster Marketing Group, your one-stop shop for all your marketing needs. Anything you need to make that marketing and advertising campaign stand out, we're your people. Concepts, design, production, social media, anything that you can dream up, we're going to make happen for you. And we can do it in a very quick turnaround. Please give us a call at 888-49-MONSTER.
This is Dirty Truth Radio, and we're going to introduce our Antonio. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, brother. Finally. Thank you. We had a little,
I really want to know. Sometimes you get technical difficulties.
Yeah, a lot of technical difficulties. But we're going to just go right. Antonio, I introduced you earlier, but for those of you who don't know, Antonio is a former L.A. County prosecutor and currently works for the Huntington Post and represents many famous clients in the law. And just give us your overall perception of the Trayvon Martin verdict and case itself.
Well, I'm coming in the middle of the conversation. I heard some great answers earlier. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's a travesty to the whole thing is that we're not looking at it historically.
Thank you, man.
There's an ethos in the Deep South. A lot of people don't really know the history of the Deep South, let alone America, and you got to look at this case through that prism to really understand it and really give it its true context. Mm-hmm. From 1877 to 1966, only one white man was prosecuted for the killing of a black man through all 100 years between 1877 and 1966. Mm-hmm. And while George Zimmerman isn't white, he's Latino, he's seen through a prism of a black and a white divide that puts him on the white side of it. Mm-hmm. And we have to be honest about that reality. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I heard earlier that was alluded to a problem with the color of justice. And I did a piece on Jodi Arias, and I don't mean to drop her into this, but, it was called The Changing Color of Justice, and how color affects not only our convictions, but our pleas, where these young black men feel like they might be in a position where they're going to get a worse case if they actually take it all the way through, and they don't actually challenge the system the same way other people do.
Amen to that. Go ahead, Rick. Rick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead and add if you want to add something to that.
Well, I was going to let him go ahead and get his in, and then
we got 4 black men on the phone, so I mean, hey, you better get it while you can get it.
He's like the statistics, he's going to give you the statistics and the numbers. And
I know. Part of the reason I moved to numbers was people used to tell me that I made emotional arguments. So now I'm going to give it to them straight.
Amen.
Black men are the most imprisoned group in the history of the modern world.
Amen to that.
Everybody else right now is kind of living off of that, feeding off of that. We have a nation that allows black men to be in prison at a rate of 10,000 per 100,000. That's the ones in prison. Another 10,000 per 100,000 are on paper. Every other group is around like 600 or 700 per 100,000. That means that Trayvon Martin, just like myself, we live in the shadow of criminality. Even as a young prosecutor, I remember a time I was walking across the street and I waved to a secretary just to say hello. White secretary. Next day, the bailiff walked up to me. I had a suit on. I had a smile on. I had all the things that I took off the hoodie. And the bailiff tells me she felt threatened. And so, there's this reality of what happens when you allow all of these men to be in prison that look a certain way.
Amen. And one thing that I was having a conversation with someone, as a black man in America, our story is we already had a planned story before we even get pulled over by the cops. We are taught to do certain things. We are taught to fear the cops. They are not our friend. It's amazing how I was thinking. I was driving the other day, and I said, a cop pulled by me, and I said, my story is already programmed in my head. What do I say? What do I do? What do I do with the keys? Where do I put my hands? And I'm willing to bet you a white boy in America has never even thought of that. And that goes to tell you how slated, how jaded, and how biased our judicial system is. And many people say, oh, we have a black president. Yeah, that's a great accomplishment. But you know what? It's going to take more. It's going to take a co-joining of hands and spirits that's going to uplift us as a black culture and as a society. And that leads me to ask you guys, what can we do short term? I'm going to say, and then we're going to get to the long term. What can we do short term? And we're going to start with Mr. Early. We're going to come back with Antonio and come off with first. Let's start with Roselle. What what can we do short term as a culture to enlighten and bring us together?
Honestly, I don't even know where to start. When I immigrated here when I was 13, 14 years old, I told you my own, relative, family, and friends already gave me a notion that, okay, you should be careful of this race and this race when you're walking down the street. And I was surprised because I came from a country that the only discrimination that I have to worry about is the status quo, which is the rich and the poor. Here, Americans, I see it as Americans against Americans, and it saddens me. And I don't know. It's from the school. You see it from the ground, from the playground. There's actually a segregation still.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Early.
First, Antonio, I appreciate you, brother. How you committed yourself to
I'm doing all right.
that quantitative data. That's good stuff, man. That'll back folks up off you, man. Listen, I think it's multifaceted and multi-layered, but I'm not gonna try to get into all of it. The one thing I want to say is this, Fred, is if we begin at a place to where as we understand I think Antonio spoke to us as black folks having an historical context. A historical context for racism, but also a historical context for the success that we've achieved. If I was just to say Black Wall Street, the average black person that I talk to doesn't know what that means. Well, you know what that means? That means a community of entrepreneurs where we were running our own stuff. And by running your own stuff, there's a level of power and respect that has to go with that. Now, there is a level of resentment that would come too, but it's a level of power and respect. I think we need to begin to talk to young people about thinking entrepreneurially, about living entrepreneurially, about using education, not so that they can get a job, but so that they can create, so that they can move forward in a space to where they can navigate this thing a little bit differently, because you're still going to get on the elevator and you're still going to be the only one in your chocolate skin, and folks still going to feel uncomfortable, but you're going to address that differently because you're not going to have to second guess yourself. So that's why I think it starts. The other piece of this is that there's a statue in front of Tuskegee University with Booker T. Washington, and under his jacket is a slave, and the statue is called Lifting the Veil. And I think those of us who have had the opportunity to use education to move to that next level, if we're not using education to liberate other folks and give them information that's going to equip them to navigate this system from a place of power, we need to look ourselves in the mirror, because then we're guilty and accountable for not doing our part either. So that's kind of where I think it starts, and then it's a big conversation after that.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, you know what? This is Rick. I'm going to chime in on that one. I know you want Antonio to go next. We're going to let Antonio go last.
We're going to let him close us out, man.
Close it out, Antonio. We back to clean up the All-Star game, baby. Go ahead, Rick.
We love that one, and mine going to be real short. What I believe that we have to do is we have to start loving ourselves. We have to know that we are important, that we are special, and that, I'm going to have to go back to the Bible, that we're the first person on the planet. So, if somebody walked with God, it had to be a black man. So when you know that, you're going to love yourself, and you're going to know that you're special and that there's nobody better than you.
Go ahead, Antonio.
Yeah, I think that we have to first, and people are not going to like this part, but now that we have, the aftermath of the case, we got to be honest about what we're letting our young ones do in the room. First-person shooter game, listening to, I don't mean to put a particular name out, whether it be Young Jeezy or Rick Ross, what they're listening to in their ears and how they're going out into this world. We got to be honest about, are we arming them with the right tools
to
be in this world? And so the other thing that I think, and this is a high threshold, but at the same time, we have to be honest about our communities and knowing the laws in our communities.
Yep.
I'm not talking about like down to the detail, but if you look at what happened in Florida,
Antonio, say that again. Please say that again. I'm sorry. Say that again.
We have to arm ourselves by beginning to know some of the basic laws in our community, so we can arm ourselves and our children. Like what happened in Florida, and I just want everybody to kind of get a basic legal grasp. Is in Florida, when somebody responds with force, you have the right to respond and meet force with force, up to lethal force. In California, as an example of the difference, you can only meet back with reasonable force. So what that meant is that once Trayvon met Zimmerman with force, he could go back all the way up to lethal force if he reasonably felt threatened for his life. In California, that's not the case. Somebody would have to pull out a knife. It would have to be something else that triggered that. And so I just say that what I feel is the combination of being responsible about what's in our homes and what our kids are feeding themselves, and then also secondarily looking at the realities of the greater laws that are around us and not just being in a utopian view of things, that it's all progressive and things are working themselves out. You have to ask and demand and require that things work themselves out for it to happen.
Amen.
Excellent statement, brother. Excellent.
Amen to that. Roselle, you want to add something to that, or you good?
No, it's just that now that this is happening, a lot of people, a lot of my friends are complaining, but they still listen to those rap music. They're putting down the black rays in their music, but they still dance to it.
I'll give a great example of that. I'm going to say something, and I want the audience out there listening to respond. What's my favorite word? I'm willing to bet you everyone out there said bitch. You get what I'm saying? So we have to reprogram, re-socialize ourselves, as Antonio's alluding to. We have to be leaders, and more importantly, Antonio, personally accountable for our own actions. It pains me how we always want to blame each other, and I'm going to use black, since we're talking about Black America. We have to learn to be accountable for ourselves. We have to go out there, and once we learn to become accountable for ourselves, we can't be too selfish to bring someone with us. Like a great example of this is my teacher standing right in front of me. He was my 7th grade teacher, and I'm willing to. I probably wouldn't bet my last dollar. Maybe I would, but I'm willing to bet you that if he hadn't made an impact in my life, I probably would have got to this destination, but I probably would have got here at 45 as opposed to 35. And this is what we have 4 black men in total on the phone, and I need us to make a vow to ourselves that we will carry the torch, we will carry the flag, that it is our responsibility, and I mean this, and genuinely, it is our responsibility to bring someone up with us. We are pretty successful as a whole. We have to be responsible and confident enough and drop fear that, again, to bring people with us. And Antonio, I applaud you for your writing, and more importantly, what's so cool about you, Antonio? I went through all your pictures. I read your articles. I said
all the links.
I said, this is a smart man. And then when I went to his picture, I said, you know what? He has embraced his culture. I totally love that. Antonio,
well,
go ahead. You got.
Well, let me say this.
No, hold it.
You have 2 seconds.
You got 2 seconds. I want you to come back on the flip side of this, and we'll come back with Antonio's answer about. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Antonio. We'll be right back in 2 minutes, guys. Hang on. And Tara, you're coming right up. We're gonna have you come on. Thank you. Okay. How can we get Tara?
Girl, you know I love you. No matter.
Looking for a delicious, fresh family meal that's ready when you are and easy on your budget? Welcome to Piara Pizza. We make our pizzas with handmade dough, 100% real cheese, and tomato sauce blended with our own spices. Nothing is ever frozen. We always have large pepperoni and cheese pizzas fresh and waiting for you for only $5. Or choose one of our specialty pizzas. We have veggie, meat lovers, supreme, and Hawaiian. Add an order of our amazing hot wings, cheesy bread, or breadsticks. Our locations are ultra-modern, ultra-clean, and open 7 days a week. Visit any one of our locations today, or check us out on the web at www.piarapizza.com. Piara Pizza. Fresh, hot, and ready for you when you come in. Stop in for your Piara Pizza today.
We're the Brothers Bear Podcast Live, and I'm your host, Sanj, and I'm always joined by
Edgar, Carlos Mandrano, and this is a show where we talk about comics, movies, TV, video games, stand-up, music, and many more geeky things.
Catch us live on Rant Radio Network on Mondays from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m.
That's another commercial in the back.
What up, foodie freaks? It's Chef Bev Lazo with the Culinary Trend Show. Join me and my brigade every Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m., where we will be cooking up some crazy stuff that will give you the appetite for discussion. It's all about the good food, good friends, and good times. Only here on RantRadioNetwork.com.
DM Narc Radio Show is now airing on the Rant Radio Network. You've heard the three guys Rant refer to us as the Clam Chowder Power Hour. Now we get to bring our New England humor over to Los Angeles. We'll be airing Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern, and we'll cover everything from local to national politics and news. Guess what? We're uncensored too. I'm Dave. Join me and Nick Friday on the Rant Radio Network.
Back, please.
It's starting. How long before it starts?
Tara? Tara, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. We can hear you fine. So, us and the rest of America want to know, why and how did you side with George Zimmerman?
Well, let me tell you, and I want to preface by this, I've been listening to the program, and I love the direction that it's taking, because I agree with the direction it's taking, and I think that the trial's kind of taken on this symbolic representation of race in America and how, African American males deal with these kinds of issues. But what happened was I followed the media coverage, and I was, oh my gosh, this white man totally just gunned down this kid. This is disgusting. And I'm a big kind of trial buff, and I was having to be on vacation when the trial started. And so I'm at the gym, and I'm listening to the opening arguments, and I'm getting all this information that wasn't given to me in the media about the details of the crime. And then I'm watching it a couple days later, and I'm thinking that I'm watching the defense present their case, and I'm watching the prosecution present their case. And I start to feel like I've been betrayed by the media, that they've put George Zimmerman into this role, this symbolic role that is, real in a lot of cases. And in this case, there wasn't the evidence there, in my opinion, to support putting him in that role.
Now, so what's your final? We have to go to another. We have so many callers calling in.
Okay, so what do you need me to say?
What's your final take on it, and why?
My final take on it is the man shouldn't have had a gun, shouldn't be allowed to have a gun, but I don't think that this was a racially motivated incident.
A lot of people are saying that it's not racially motivated.
I think the racial motivation started before 1865, and we don't have time to get into that now. We only touching on the surface. And Tara, I want to thank you for calling. And our lines are freaking blowing up. But I appreciate you calling in, and if we do a part 2, I'll gladly call you back. And we appreciate you calling in. Thank you, Tara, for calling in. Appreciate you, Tara.
All right.
So we have Antonio back on line 1.
Okay.
Hello, Antonio?
Antonio, are you there?
That is. How are you
okay,
doing?
good. Okay.
I guess I got dropped off.
Now you're back. Shoot.
yeah.
Did you hear
that? So I was just going to tell you guys in so many words that's part of the reason I decided to jump in on the Rick Project. It wasn't purely just, I want to tell an L.A. dope story. I really wanted to humanize the reality of the black criminal, not to glorify him, but to show him as what happened in the 1980s in our city, and then it exploded in cities all across America as a result.
Amen.
One of the things that you're seeing with the Trayvon Martin case that I feel everybody's kind of missing is this is a cross-section of race, age, and gender. And so you're getting a young black male. And then what you see is the reflection of that. Like when you listen to Rachel Gentile speak, you're not just hearing her speak Ebonics. You're actually hearing her speak Twitter. That's why she talks in one word.
Excellent,
like one
brother.
word.
That's a great
She's
point.
speaking like she tweets
Uh-huh.
and like she texts. And so you're looking at a whole reality that everybody is kind of missing of age, race, and gender, and how we as a society, particularly with race and gender, are not addressing what the consequences are for allowing the prison rape that I talked about to happen. You know, one other thing that I wanted to say was there's all kind of bias that is in our system, and what it leads to is like when we come back to Florida and you have that reasonable. I didn't get a chance to get in the first half, and I know you guys talked much about this. He has to be feel reasonably threatened for his life. Well, when you have a law that sets it up where now if I'm a black male, you can feel reasonably threatened just because I'm a black male. Whereas if I'm an Asian female like Roselia is, then all of a sudden I got to pull out a knife or I got to stab you first. Like Jodi Arias had the 27 stab wounds, slit her man's neck, and she's still not seen as cruel. I mean, you look at the system and it's very much just out of whack.
Amen to that. Go ahead, Mr. Early. But before Mr. Early, can you do us a favor? Can you conference call Rick Ross and you guys talk on your line? Is that possible?
He got hung up as well.
Yeah, he got hung up as well. Is that possible?
Yeah, let me try a three-way.
Okay, three-way Rick Ross, and we're gonna go to Mr. Early. Go ahead, Mr. Early.
I was just kind of listening to what Antonio said, and I think, I just think that the comments as it relate to the issue of race in America and our understanding of and folks' understanding of us, that's sometimes where a jury's mindset begins, and outside of God, everyone else on this planet walks into a situation with a bias, and unless we can really deal with that, the fact that you are biased and you fight against that, you're going to constantly see folks through the prism that you've already put them in when they walk in there. And so I mean, I heard the conversation. I haven't seen the picture of my brother Antonio, but the question is just what should a lawyer look like? What should he look like? I don't even care, because the way he's articulate and understands the law, being able to interact and exchange ideas, that currency of ideas, that's what we need to equip our young people to do. Because other than that, brother, when they see him, we want them to see them and hear something different than what they think is going to come out of their mind.
But it doesn't matter, though, because Antonio was just saying that he was walking across, to go to the court, and he was wearing his suit, and still there were a lot of...
In the words of my wife, he's a black man in America.
And people still got scared. Fascinating, isn't it? They still
well,
got scared.
Let me throw this in there as well. And we got to be honest about the reality. I'm a young black male in America.
Exactly.
The reality is that we allowed something to happen since 1980 that no industrial society in the modern world allowed to happen, called the prison industrial complex.
Yes, sir.
And it put all these men in prison for child custody, traffic tickets, and some nonviolent drug offenses. Then we have some violent offenders in there. And what it did is it created a shadow. And like now, everybody sees us as the criminal. We are the defined criminal, and we have to work from there. Yeah. And I don't know how to fix that. I plan on doing certain projects.
But I think you do, bro. I think you do, Antonio, because part of how you fixed it is equipping yourself to articulate it. I think sometimes if we're not equipped to articulate it, we can't challenge other people's thinking. And you put yourself in the position through your education, through the things that you've done, through the projects you work on, even through your writing with the Huffington Post, to articulate it, to challenge people's thinking, man. And I just want to applaud you for that, man.
Thank you so much.
Amen. Now, how can we move forward? And America's only, I'm willing to bet, middle America, no matter if we have 10 million Americans marching, middle America is only going to highlight the news reporters in Nebraska, the news reporters in the heart of Texas, news reporters in Iowa are only going to highlight those 20 to 40 idiots who were causing ruckus, while people like you, Antonio, people like Roselle, people like myself, people like Darren, and people like Rick are actually marching for the injustice that happened to Trayvon Martin. What can we do? Because obviously it's going to be a movement from this point on. What can we do now?
Didn't Rick say something earlier about the kind of media images? I just think back to when I was in college, man. We had, and this is always thrown out, and I know it may sound kind of trite, but we had the Cosby Show and we had A Different World. We showed an intact black professional family with multiple kids.
8 o'clock every Thursday.
And we also showed black folks in college. talk to me about right now a TV show that's not surrounded by buffoonery that shows black folks in that light. And if we can't identify one is that we got to own our own media. We got to own our own images and the presentation of those images.
Amen.
Otherwise, it's perpetuated amongst us and amongst those outside of the African American community.
Go ahead, Antonio. You got 1 minute, Antonio.
Well, you know, in 1 minute, what can we do? You know, I kind of take the opposite position that those create somewhat delusional images of us. Not saying that there isn't a small percentage that lives that way. I believe that we've gotten away from the community growing kids up in the community where everybody kind of watches out together, and that happened as we moved north. I think moving north was a great impact on the black community, and one of the things that we can do is be honest about the impact that had on our overall social development. And like right now, blacks, you know, we're 27% of black America lives in poverty. And until we have 10% of black men in prison, and so like the question becomes, whose lives are built on that reality? I mean, whose lives, you know, these towns that are building these private prisons that our sons, that our fathers, that our brothers are going to, and then they create jobs for everybody else in the town. We gotta really address that. You know, everybody wants to say, and I know we only have a minute. Everybody wants to say the nice thing about Trayvon, but what if you're the prison guard? Are you willing to give up that job of watching somebody who has child custody be in jail?
Amen.
So I mean, I think we have to be honest with ourselves. That's what we can do as a country.
Honesty.
And I don't. And I would just say this, brother, is that I agree with you, and I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and. I think it's a both and because you make a good point, and that's a whole other show, Fred, looking at the impact of integration on us as a community.
I think you just got invited for part 2, Antonio.
That's funny. I understand this. I wasn't talking about integration. I was talking about migration.
All right. Well, that's both because I got pieces of both of that. But I feel you, man. I understand. I do.
All right, we got 1 minute left, and first, we lost Rick Ross, but I want to thank him for coming in. I want to thank you, Antonio. I want to thank Roselle for putting this together. I want to thank Darren Early for coming in, and Antonio. And obviously 10 seconds to tell people what's going on with you and what's coming up next for you. And
we have a book coming out. We're probably going to be doing it with Kathy Scott, who did Killing of Biggie Smalls on Rick's autobiography. We're working on some projects with Nick Cannon, possibly. You know, and we're trying to see if we can bring something that humanizes the whole Rick story to give give our lives, you know, kind of focus where we're humans. You know, we're not just like criminals. What else? You can go to freewayrick.com to get more information on Rick's story. We also have a documentary, Cracking the System, that's coming out that'll really show what happened here in L.A. in the 80s.
Thank you. Mr. Early, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I just want to, do you have a website, Antonio, that I can go to? Because I just want to.
Just Google his name. You're going to get a bunch of stuff. Just Google Antonio Moore.
So I'm going to challenge everybody to do the same thing I
His
do.
articles on the post are really like.
Okay.
And we want to thank the audience for tuning in. And I'm going to try and have a part 2 tomorrow next week because we need to move forward with this and we need to hold ourselves accountable. So Dirty Truth Radio, we thank you, Antonio. We thank you, Rick Ross. We thank you, Darren. We thank you, Roselle. And we look forward to you guys coming back next week. And I'm going to try and convince these guys to come back in. And we'll move forward with this conversation. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Girl, you know